Okay, this is how to go about making a summer hat, and as you can see, I've already done 2 parts. And if you're sitting there like, okay, where's the video to this? It's already been out there. All I did was make a couple of adjustments to my pattern for the witch's hat, which had the nice brim to it, and an adjustment to my netted hat that I did. And I will post a link for the netted hat up here, and then the link for the witch's hat up here for the brim. And I'm going to tell you the adjustment. You're going to go about doing the E-wrap a row, purl a row, but on the rib stitch, which is your purl 1, E-wrap 1, you're only going to do 3 rows rather than 5. Then you'll purl an E-wrap, and then you'll do the 3-row netted design, which is from here down. And instead of doing it 5 times, you're only going to do it 4 times, and then you're going to continue as you would to cast off, decreasing every other peg, tossing the bottom loop over, and drawstring cast off to remove the bulk. Now, this is going to look shorter. That's fine, because we don't want it hitting over our ears, because it's a summer hat, so we want it to cover the crown of the head. And that's the adjustment I made with that. The brim is exactly the same as the witch's hat. The only difference is I did 2 extra sets. I did 2 extra sets from here over for your half row, for your short rows, and then your complete rows. And so you'll want to do 8 rather than 6 total to get, because you don't want it sloping down, you want it straight out, because you're going to need Mod Podge to go in and stiffen it out. But I have an iron prepped, and because it's a summer hat, I want it nice and thin as possible, and I used Caron's Simply Soft to do this. And I have an iron set onto high, but it's almost in the middle on a medium. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to iron this down, and I'm going to try to flatten it out as much as possible. Now, normally I don't iron, and normally you could try blocking, but I want this flat. And you will need some pins for later to make sure that it stays flat even after you go in and Mod Podge it and let it dry. But you want to make sure those ends are as flat as possible when you go around. And no, I haven't ironed this before sewing them together. And that's pretty flat, and we'll go around and do the other half. And then I'll sew it together. And you want it to be a nice circle, a really nice circle. And you want it to be as flat as you can. Now, this isn't my usual way of going about things, but to do a properly brimmed hat like this, it takes a few extra steps. Now, if you have a better way of stiffening your yarn into a nice beautiful brim that sits directly from the base of the hat, go for it. But this is the way I'm doing it. As I said, most of my stuff is just a guideline, and we're going to be sewing those together. And so it should be nice and flat like this. So we're going to put that to the side and let that cool. And we're going to move to our actual hat. And I want to iron it out some, because I want it to be solid when I go in. I want it to just be like sewing 2 stiff pieces together. And so I'm going to start off ironing the brim, and that should naturally stretch it. And I'm kind of going from the inside. I'm just going in and ironing it. Okay, and this is about ironed out as much as I want it. Okay, and it's going to look a little funky for now, but when we go and mold it with the Mod Podge, it'll really stiffen out. So at this point, now that we've ironed our edges, what you want to do is you want to go in, and I'll probably go in and tighten my cast on real quick. Now that we've got that. Okay, what you want to do is you want to line these up, and I would suggest sewing from the outer edge in, and that way you don't have a knot or anything that shows up on the outer edge. So go ahead and sew that, and then when you're done sewing, you'll want to iron that flat. And then after that, you want to follow the witch's hat basically when it comes to sewing on the base of your hat. And I'm going to start off where my seam is with where my cast on tail is. And what you want to do is make sure that your right sides are facing each other. So make sure that your E-wrap side is facing you, and make sure the positive side is facing you on the hat. Now, what I'm planning on doing is putting them together, put the right sides together, and follow along the line, making sure that it stretches. Both are stretched out as much as possible, because when you do that, you want it to have a little give when you wear it. And then after you sew on your base of your hat to your brim, like following on the witch's instructions on how to sew the base of the hat to the brim, you'll want to go in and Mod Podge. So go ahead and pause the video and make up your hat and iron it out and sew things together, and we will go about doing the Mod Podge to put this hat together, and then it'll need drying time to actually stiffen. So this is how you make a summer hat. We've gotten our hat sewn together, and if you like a looser brim, you can leave it like this, but I want a stiff brim. And what you'll need is you'll need a foam board like this, and you'll need Mod Podge, and you'll need a brush, just any old brush, and then you'll need pins, and I am using a foam flower decorating thing because it's a great hat shape kind of thing for this. And so here's what we're going to do. We need to get this thing pinned down, and I want the hat stretched out as much as possible. So what I'm doing is going in, and you'll see these sections here where you did your short rows to create that nice curve. That's going to be your points. I'm going to call those your points. So what you want to do, as you can see, is you have a point here, and you can lift this up, and you want to find that point and go down to the edge, the very edge, and you want to take and push down. And you want to go to the next one, which is right here. Go down to the edge. You want a nice stretch and push that in. Go to the next one and push that in. And the next one. Push that in. And the next one. which is your seam. Push that in. And the next one right here. You're going to find your base. Push that in. Next one, find your base. Push that in. Find your base. Push it in. And you're all the way around. Now, at this point, you want to stretch out your brim to its max. And we're going to find those points again where we did our short rows. And we're going to pull out, and you're going to angle it out and push in. Now you can go to the other side, and you want to angle out, push in. And then I like to do the side, that one, angle out, push in, angle out, push in, go to the other side, angle out, push in, angle out, push in, and then angle out, push in, angle out, push in. And then I'm going to go in between those sections so that I can give it a rounder look. And out, push in. And just do that all the way around. Okay, you have it pinned down. Hold on, it doesn't look quite as good. There. Okay, and you kind of want to look at it and gauge it and see if it's even for the most part. And once you think you've got it even for the most part, you can go ahead and put your pins away. And you want to get your Mod Podge. Now you want to just follow the instructions, and I'm going to apply it directly to the top. Just going to open it up, and we're just going to stick the brush in and start painting this on. And you just want to paint it on entirely. And get a nice thick coat on it, because we want this to stiffen quite a bit. And if you want the actual hat part to just mold to your head better, you don't have to paint this on. We wanted it stretched to the max. I'm going to paint onto the hat as well. But go ahead and load the glue on all the way around. And then what you want to do is allow it to dry for 24 hours. And go from there. So go ahead and pause the video and take care of putting your glue onto your hat brim, and then let it dry for 24 hours, and then come back and we will show you what it looks like when it's taken off. There's lots of options here. Now if you want a bigger brim, keep in mind that on the brim part, if you would like a larger brim, that you can do 16 pegs. And when you do the 16 pegs, keep in mind that you're going back halfway and then working your way back to the starting point. So keep that in mind if you want a larger brim than this. I don't need a real big brim. This is just a nice summer hat. Okay, our Mod Podge has dried, and I've taken off all the pins, and it will be a little sticky, but nothing should be so glued on or anything like that that it shouldn't easily come up. So I'm going to pull this up, and note when you have one of these, if it still has a plastic on it, keep the plastic on. If not, put plastic wrap over it. That way it'll come off easier when you Mod Podge. If you don't, then the styrofoam will probably stick. So here's our hat, and you see it has a slight bend to it. You can stop this direction if you want. It has darkened the hat a couple of shades into a medium green rather than a light sage green. And I might want mine stiffer. And if you want it stiffer like me, you want to flip it inside out. So I'm going to flip it inside out. And the good news is because we've already done one side in the Mod Podge, it's already flat. So all you should have to do is go in and paint the other side with the Mod Podge and let it dry, and it should be stiff like you wanted. This one I played with on the color change and everything. And if you want to know how I did the little triangle section, what I did was every time I was doing the short rows to create the curve, I was in one color, and then when I switched to do the straight rows, I changed to another color. That makes it this effect, and then what I did was actually crocheted an edge to it. But you don't have to do this. I still went ahead and ironed it like I did on the previous one, and on the base of the hat, what I did was I did the first 2 rows in one color, and then I did alternate pegs in another color through here, and then I went back to a solid color, and then I changed back to the other color. So that's kind of how I did this color variation, if you're curious. So I went researching online and everything, and I've made adjustments to my whole system that I originally did. And you still need the Mod Podge, and you'll need water, and you'll need some flour, and you'll need a big old spoon, a bowl, preferably plastic, one that you don't mind, you know, all you use it for is stiffening things. And I took a dry foam flour thing, and originally I used it as is with the plastic around it, the original plastic I bought it, and I found that the hat paste was really too big. And I measured my head, and I actually took a hammer with it still encasing, because you can still see the barcode and stuff, and hammered it down and kept on hammering it and hammering it and hammering it down until I got it down to, for me, preferably 22 inches, which is how low you can get these things, which will work a lot better. And so I hammered it all the way around, and then I covered it in just packaging tape, plastic packaging tape that's clear. And that's how I got that to a smaller. If you can get a smaller one than a 7.8 inches, go for it. Just a little smaller, but this is the best thing that I find works for getting the crown molded on the hat. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix up our batch of stiffening agent. And I'm going to take some flour, and I'm going to do a big spoonful of flour. I'm going to get my Mod Podge. Get it opened. Okay. Then I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. We may add more water later. Okay, then we want to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and mix this in. As best you can. Again, we're probably going to add a little bit more water and glue. Okay, once we get that flour really down, then I'm going to do another scoop of that. It's supposed to be equal parts glue, equal parts water. But I'm going to add a little extra water because, okay. Keep stirring that up until you have a nice mixture. Keep stirring this up until you have a nice mixture. That you want. Okay. Now here's where the challenge may be, and I really probably should make more. But I'm going to dip the whole hat in here. And I just don't like wasting a lot. So I have, to me it looks like it'd be enough to do at least one hat, but it probably needs more. But remember, equal parts glue, equal parts Mod Podge to equal parts water, and like a tablespoon of flour. But if you're going to do a big batch, I maybe use an extra tablespoon of flour. But once you get this mixture done, go ahead and stick the hat in and try soaking up most of the moisture out of it. Again, I might need to make more, but you're really wanting to get all the fibers really soaked in. And add a little bit of water. That gets it mostly soaked in. And I just want to get a general stiffening agent already in most of the fibers. But what I'm going to do is make up another batch and actually paint it on this time. So that gets it generally wet through and through in the inner fibers, which is what you want. Okay, move that aside, pick that up, and then you're going to start laying out the hat. Stretch it out a little bit. Move that out of the way. Okay, and then follow the instructions on pinning. Pin here, pin where your yellow pieces are at the base of the hat, and then pin everywhere there's a change of color. Okay, but before I do that, I'm going to go in and make up another mixture, another batch, and I'm going to paint it on and make sure that it's thoroughly covered. This will darken the yarn some, just so you know, but I will suggest using red heart yarn or very stiff yarn for this kind of project, because after you iron it, it is softer. But I would suggest a stiffer yarn for the project, and you don't have to go this far. You can just leave it as is. But again, go ahead and pin it into place where you can stretch it a little bit. Pin it into place, make up another batch, and then paint it on, and this way your brim should be stiff. I'm going to go ahead and make another batch, so go ahead and pause the video and make you up another batch and paint it on, and then pin everything into place, and then let it dry, and you should be done.